Cyber with T. So today we'll be looking into different chunks of topics. The first thing we'll be looking into today is an interconnected concept that describes, security weakness, the potential danger that could occur, and how to mitigate, this weakness. So we'll be looking into, vulnerability, threat, and risk. That's the first thing we'll be looking into today. And then quickly, we would also move to, because we talked about threats, we'll move into talking about who we refer to as threat actors. So in cybersecurity, there are people we refer to as threat actors. We have different types of them. We'll look into them. And these types are based on their motivation, their level of skill, their method of, attack, how they conduct the attack. And this is how we classify the types. And then from there, we'll move to something called social engineering. Social engineering is a concept, a technique, I'll call it a manipulation technique that attackers could use. Instead of attacking the technology, they use human psychology. So social engineering is when you have people, get information from you just based on, human reaction. Like they say that human is the weakest security link. I'm sure you've heard that a couple of times. We have the weakest security link. So even if a company or an organization have the best of technology, they could still attack a company just through human. And, previously in first week, we mentioned something called insider threat. So that insider threat could be a way to, penetrate human being through their thinking, through their sense of urgency and the rest. And that's what social engineering is about. And then quickly, we would also talk about a couple of cyber attacks that we have. We have a lot of them, but I'll just mention a few of them just to keep this video as short as possible. Like I mentioned previously, that I would not like this video to be very long so it doesn't get boring, and especially for people who are just learning step by step, so it's not like so many information at once. So these are the things we'll be discussing for this week. So let's begin. As I said before, I told you that the first thing we'll be discussing is something interconnected. It's like an interconnected concept that describes security weakness, the potential danger in it, and how to mitigate it. So we have something called here we have, let's say this is vulnerability, let's say this is threat, for example, and let's say this is impact. This will be risk. Now I would explain to you. So what do we refer to as vulnerability? I'm sure you can really relate it to English words. So vulnerability is like a loophole. Vulnerability is like a flaw in a system or a procedure. So vulnerability is like a gap. I was explaining yesterday how that segregation of duty. I was explaining in the first week that segregation of duty means that one individual doesn't have a complete control over a business a business process. So for example, an employee is requesting for an invoice. One individual should not have a control over processing the invoice, approving the invoice, and sending the invoice to the bank. So in case in an organization, one employee have that type of control, let's say it's a small organization and they have a lot of people to do approvals or send to bank, that is a vulnerability in their process. It's a vulnerability in their process. And it could occur with system, any other thing security connected. We could pick vulnerability in them. Now, what is a threat? A threat is anything that can exploit a vulnerability, or anyone who can exploit a vulnerability. Remember, we mentioned something called insider threat. So insider threat is somebody who has the ability to exploit a vulnerability in an organization. And there are so many other things like that. Attackers could, look into what you have as a vulnerability in your system and try to get in through that. We have something called backdoor. You would learn about this as time goes on. It's something that attackers could use to get into your system, maybe through your codes and the rest. So threat is a means or somebody who has the ability to exploit a vulnerability. So anything that could exploit the loophole in your system, in your process, in your procedure is called a threat. Now, what is a risk? So the third part is a risk, but I would explain to you where impact comes in. Now, the third part is a risk. A risk is defined as, having a threat successfully executed. Now, let's go back. We said vulnerability is a loophole. We said threat is anyone or anything that has the ability to exploit a vulnerability. Now, let's say the threat is carried out successfully, then it becomes a risk. So what is a risk? A risk is, vulnerability with a threat and the impact. Because sometimes we have things that are low risk. Say, for example, we have a loophole. If it is exploited by a threat, then the impact on the company is very low. It doesn't impact the company financially. It doesn't impact the company when it comes to data theft or employee information theft or something like that. Then it is low risk. It means that the impact of this threat happening is very low. So we won't really put, sometimes the company just, accepts it and let it go. And we have different means by which we can, mitigate risk. I won't go into it a lot. We have, risk avoidance. I will just write it a little bit. So we have avoidance. We have, I didn't plan to talk about this topic, but it's something we'll dive in later on. So we have risk avoidance, we have transference, we have acceptance. Sometimes people accept risk and sometimes they mitigate risk. So for risk that are low, companies might just accept it and understand it is a flaw in their system, but they can do with it because the impact is very low. So now let's quickly move to the next topic. We said we are going to talk about, who threat actors are. So, threat actors. Who are they? They are individuals. They can be a group. They can be an entity that has the ability to engage in cyber attacks. They could cause destruction, like we said previously. What availability? When I was mentioning availability, I was mentioning something around destruction. So these people have the ability to, impact your company. They strike a cyber attack against company, against a group, against a system, against a procedure, anything. So these are who we refer to as, threat actors. Now let me bring it back to what everybody understands. I am sure everybody has heard about Anonymous. They are a group of threat actors. Anonymous that you hear about, that they hacked this, they did this. They are a group. And for some of you who have also watched the 0 Day Netflix movie, and in fact that movie before, because almost everybody can relate to it. So the Reapers in that movie, they are threat actors. You could classify them as threat actors. Now we have different types of threat actors. I mentioned that these types are based on their motivation. What is their motive? Why are they, trying to attack an organization? Why are they trying to attack a bank? Why are they trying to attack a system, a procedure? Their motivation. And the number two thing is that, we classify it also based on their skill level. Some have, low skills when it comes to, attacking a system. They are not so well organized. Some are more advanced. They are the ones that causes APT. We call it persistent threat, whatever, advanced persistent threat. So those ones are very, 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 very organized. And we could classify Anonymous as this type. And also the last part is how they carry out their attack also could be in this classification. So the first one will be script kiddies. We have activists. We have nation state types of actors. We have insider threats. Of course, I've talked about this before a lot of times. And we have is organized crime. So I'll define each of them. So who are script kiddies? Script kiddies are just like, let's say high school students. Basically, I'm just trying to, make you understand who they are. Like high school students who are trying to hack a system for fun. Usually, they get this malicious script or software from somebody who had already prepared it. It's not like their skill level is very low, so they don't have the ability to put together the script by themselves. That's why we refer to them as script kiddies. They do it for fun. Sometimes they are just trying to look, analyze their hacking skills, and then they are sending codes out for people who would click on it, maybe on Reddit and some other places. So we call them script kiddies. Activists, they're like, we call it activists, but they're like activists. People who actually try to cause an attack because of their social ideology. Say, for example, a company who is selling like dairy products, and these people are animal lovers, and they feel like, you are hurting the animals, things like that. Social ideology. So because of that, they hack, maybe attack a company, hack into their system or whatever for social ideology. Now, nation states. Nation states are the ones that is being used by government to attack, different countries. And if you look at, the cyber warfare that was shown in 0 Day, it could be related to as, nation states, even though, it's within the country that they have the attack. But in the beginning of the movie, it was showing as if Russia was attacking them. So these are the ones, they are very organized, they are funded by the government, in quote. Usually, these are nation state actors. Insider threats, I mentioned it initially, what insider threat it means. It means that somebody in the system who is familiar with the system, who knows the procedure, who knows things in the company, is trying to attack the company. And it could be for different reasons. It could be for revenge because the employee is let go of. It could be because you just want to show them that you know a lot about the system and then attack them. That's what we call insider threats. And again, I'll refer to the movie. Somebody like the speaker in 0 Day, Richard, could be referred to as insider threat because as a speaker, he was aware of the attack. They were just trying to use the attack to put people on their toes. So I would refer to him as an insider threat. What is organized crime? They are the cyber criminals who do it for for financial gain, for fraud, for data theft. Sometimes they can steal a whole bunch of email address of a company just to sell it and get money back. So these are like the few very popular types. There are other types of threat actors. So after this, I'll quickly move to what we call social engineering, like I mentioned previously. So what do we refer to as social engineering? And these are all, as you can see, they are all connected to, threat actors in a way. And that's why I, box all the topics together. Now, what is social engineering? Social engineering is a manipulative techniques, that is used based on, human psychology to get sensitive information from people, password, bank details, to get them to click on things because you're working on their psychology. Now, attackers could attack a system, they could attack a network, they could write some scripts and, it could result in so many things. But this social engineering, people who are social engineers are people who have trained themselves enough to know what to tell people to get, the right information from them. They could call the reception and say something like, what, I am Brian from this department. They don't belong in a company, but they will say, I'm Brian from this department, my colleague is this, because they have made their finding. And as you know, we have all our information on LinkedIn. So people could connect where you're working with who you're working and use it as a social engineering technique to attack someone else. So it's very possible. So it's a manipulative techniques to get sensitive data. The aim is to get sensitive data from you, to steal your identity, and all of that. And eventually, social engineering could proceed when they have this information from you. You could then proceed into attack, attacking the system, attacking the network, and so on. So that is social engineering. Now, we'll proceed to what cyber attacks means. So, or talk about the types. We have different types of cyber attack. It's just an attack against you, against the system, against the company, against an organization, against a group, that is done most likely online. We have different types of cyber attacks. The first one, we have phishing. The second one, we have ransomware. I just came up with very few, and then afterwards we can dive into the bigger topics. So we have malware, we have deepfake. Okay. We have different cyber attacks. I come up with just 5 of them. We could discuss more as we go further, but if you could know these 5, you have an idea how, what types of cyber attacks we have. So the first one is phishing. I'm sure many of you have heard about phishing. If you have not heard about phishing, I'm sure you have received one. You just didn't know. So what is phishing? Phishing is a deceptive email. Could be an SMS, could be a phone call that is done, against you to extract information from you, or maybe for you to be able to click on a link that could result into downloading a malware into your system. So that's what phishing is. We have different type of phishing. I'm sure many of you have received email like, you won 10,000 naira, or you won a blender. Click on this link to put your information so that we can send. That's a phishing email. So it could occur by different means. We have through the email, and that's phishing email. We have through messages, and for messages we call it smishing. So because you could come across it, so SMS, smishing. Through voice call we call it vishing. So phishing email. Through SMS or instant messaging, whatever, it's called smishing. When it's a voice call, it's called vishing. We have the latest one through QR code, and this is happening a lot right now. That there is a legit QR code, and an attacker will put another QR code that will redirect you to a malicious website. So this QR code is also very prominent now. It's new, but it's happening. So these are all part of deceptive method to get you to do whatever the attacker wants you to do, whether to put your information somewhere so that they can extract it, whether to put your bank details somewhere so they can extract it, whether to send you to whether for you to click on something and download a malware into your system. That's what phishing is about. Now, what is ransomware? I mentioned in week 1 the encryption is like a lock. So when something is encrypted, we can liken it to English word that the person locked your system. So ransomware is a type of cyber attack where your information or your system or your laptop is locked, is encrypted, that you will not be able to have access, maybe to some file, maybe to the entire PC itself, or whatever, your phone. Ransomware is a situation where it is locked and then ransom is demanded from you. So when you see ransomware, just think about ransom. Your system is locked. Again, I'll refer you to the Netflix movie. And why I'm referring you is because now this is something you've watched it, you can watch it again, you can identify with it than me telling you all the cybersecurity jargon. So in the ransomware, if you remember, President Evelyn mentioned something like, in the summer, the bank was initially attacked, that nobody had access to the information, that they had to pay ransom. So that's how ransomware looks like. They will encrypt everything that has to do with your customer, your client, whatever, organizational information, everything, and they will demand that you pay. Now, even in the case of ransomware, you're not sure that after you pay, they will release those files to you. That's how tricky it could be. You could pay them. There are situations where people have paid, companies have paid, and yet the files remain encrypted. So now, what is DDoS? DDoS is when there is an excessive traffic towards a website or towards a particular network in order to bring it down, to crash it, so that authorized users will not have access to it. Remember when I mentioned what authorized user and unauthorized user is? And this also occurs in the movie. Again, I'm referring to the movie so you would understand. I would bring it back home for you to understand. So in the movie, you remember when everybody is rushing to the bank, they could not check their balance, they could not withdraw money, they could not, deposit money, everything crashed down. So that's the work of an attacker. It means denier of service, and this one means distributed denier of service. So it means that an attacker will be sending something called botnets towards your traffic. It will cloud your traffic a lot and crash you down, so that people who are even authorized to then check it, the people who own accounts in the bank, are not able to access their information. Is a form of attack. So now let's go to malware. Malware, what does it mean? It just means that somebody is sending you a malicious software, a malicious code for you to click on it, and then it does whatever it wants to do to your system. It can be in different form. We have under malware, we have the virus, we have the worm. One of it is self-replicating, one is not. One will wait for you to take an action, maybe click or download something, and then it downloads into your system. One doesn't wait for you. When it gets itself into your system, it starts to replicate itself. So now deepfake also. Deepfake can be an AI kind of generated photo or video that looks like the person but is not the person. Now I would explain that properly so that you would understand. Say for example, you are in an organization. I'm using organization a lot because then you can understand better. And then you are one person that approves payments, maybe for your CEO. Let's say, for example, your CEO account is hacked. And then once the person hacked it, the person have access to you as the executive assistant who could approve maybe a payment that he wants to do. That person can come on a call with you and use the deepfake video of your CEO to tell you, yes, I'm the one, you can approve the payment. So this is to open your eyes to how sophisticated attackers have become. Now you'll be able to see your CEO video. What is stopping you from, approving the money? And this has happened before. I think it's an Austrian airline where an employee transferred a massive amount of money, something $1 million, because, they got a message from their CEO to make the transfer. So these are, cyber attack types. And we could discuss further. If you'd like to know any more that I did not mention here, you can put it in the comments below. And I think that will be it for this week. See you next time. Thank you.